This is part 2 of the all items video. Check out part 1 to catch up. But let's go over some mistakes from part 1. For the two flinching items, King's Rock and Razorfang, I accidentally multiplied their effects instead of having them being added. So the calculation would actually be a 19% chance to flinch instead of 21%. And here are the calculations if you hit 3, 4, 5, or 10 times with the multi-strike move. And one itsy bitsy tiny mistake that absolutely no one caught is that I accidentally said that the ring target forces moves to redirect to this Pokemon. It only just removes the type immunities of that Pokemon. Also, Bright Powder gives a 10% decrease to your opponent's attacks. I just forgot to scroll down past the original Gen 2 effect. And also I mentioned that Solar Beam takes 2 charge turns in the rain. That's not actually true. It still only takes 1 charge turn in the rain, but if used in the rain, the power will be halved. And for a quick clarification, the 3 form changing masks for Ogerpon give it a 20% boost to its attacks. So that means Ogerpon will end up getting a 72.8% boost to all of its attacks. And I asked you guys if I should bring in old items that got Dexited, and you guys said yes. So adding back the items that were removed in previous generations, that adds an extra 337 items. But like before, 201 of these items can be held but don't actually have any effects. So that adds an extra 136 items to the total. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment. It really does help a lot. Also, there's a new hype feature, so if you can, go ahead and give this video a hype. I don't exactly know what it does, but let's see what happens. The 4 drives that are specific to Genesect will change Technoblast into a water, fire, ice, or electric type move. But since all 4 are being held, we'll just say Technoblast will do 4 different types of damage: water, fire, ice, and electric type damage. The Lucky Punch and Leak will boost Chansey or the Farfetch'd line's critical rate by 2 stages. But since you're also holding the Scope Lens and Razor Claw, that means if these Pokemon are holding all items at once, they will always land a critical hit, since their critical hit rate will be boosted to 4 and it's already maxed out at 3. The Deep Sea Tooth and Scale will double Clamperl's special defense and special attack. Quick Powder and Metal Powder will double the speed and defense of Ditto specifically when it's not transformed. Once it's transformed, it loses these boosts. The Thick Club item will double the attack of the Cubone line, and similarly to Arceus, the 17 memory items will change Savali into 17 different types, but the memory disc don't give boost to attacks. And here's the defensive type chart of a Pokemon that has 17 different types. And speaking of Pokemon with multiple types, in the last video I mentioned the 17 plate items for Arceus, but there are technically 2 more plates. The Blank Plate is an item exclusive to Pokemon Legends Arceus, and it was never transferred to Scarlet and Violet. But this item is treated as a key item in that game, but so is every other plate. So if this item was transferred to a game where you can hold items, it should work like all the other plates. So if Arceus is holding all 18 of the plates, it'll get a 20% boost to every single type of attack, and Judgment will deal 18 different types of damage. But the next plate item is similar to the Blank Plate, as it's a key item exclusive to PLA, but probably won't ever be translated as a held item in game because it's pretty broken. But what the Legend Plate does is that it will keep Arceus as a normal type, but whenever you use the move Judgment, Arceus will change to whatever type deals most damage to the opposing Pokemon, prioritizing 4 times weakness over 2 times weakness. But if Arceus is already every single type at once, it technically would already be a type that's super effective against any other Pokemon. So I don't know if this item will actually have any effect here. Or what could happen is that the Legend Plate overrides all the other plates and the Arceus becomes one singular type once it uses Judgment. Otherwise, it'll be all 18 types. The 47 Mega Stones, Red Orb, and Blue Orb will allow any Pokemon able of Mega Evolving to Mega Evolve. After Gen 5, all the gem items, except for the normal gem, were made unattainable. But in Gen 6, they technically were in the code of the game, and the effects were changed so that it would give you a 30% boost instead of a 50% boost to all of your attacks. There also was a Fairy Gem added, it just was also made unattainable. But if this Pokemon can hold all of the gem items, that means it would get a one-time 30% boost to an attack of every type, for a total boost of 87.2% to your attacks. The 18 type Z crystals and the 16 species specific Z crystals will allow this Pokemon to use a Z move of any type, and the species specific Pokemon to turn specific moves into the species specific Z move, like Pikachu with the Pikaneum Z crystal turning Volt Tackle into Keteshra Pika. But this ends up bringing a question: if a Pokemon can use a Z move and is able to Mega Evolve, is it able to use both? But the only precedent for this is Rayquaza, which can only Mega Evolve if it isn't holding a Z Crystal. So if you have a Pokemon that's able to Mega Evolve, I think you'd have to choose one. You can only Mega Evolve or only use a Z move. So as much as it pains me to say, I don't think we can have a Terra Flying, Dynamax, Mega Rayquaza firing off Z boosted Dragon Ascents. The leftover item will heal 1/16 of your HP at the end of every turn, and the item Black Sludge will also heal 1/16 of your HP at the end of every turn if you're poison type. If not, you'll lose 1/8 of your health. Shell Bell will restore your HP by 1/8 of the damage you deal to your opponent. Berry Juice will heal you for 20 HP whenever you fall below 50% of your HP. The Berserk Gene is an item exclusive to Gen 2. It will boost your attack by 2 stages, but leave the holder confused for 256 turns. The Polka Dot Bow is another item exclusive to Gen 2 that boosts normal moves by 10%. This item was technically replaced by the Silk Scarf in Gen 3, but we'll just keep it anyway. The Macho Brace will double any EV points you get from knocking out a Pokemon, but will also have your speed. So with the 7 previous items having your speed, you'll have a 1/256 multiplier attached to your speed. So if Regieleki with a maxed out speed stat was a Pokemon holding these items, it would end up having a speed stat of around 2. And these next items don't have direct effects in battle, but still have effects when they're being held. The Lucky Egg will grant a 1.5 multiplier to XP after knocking out an opponent. Sue Bill will increase the amount of friendship gained by a Pokemon holding it. The Amulet Coin will double the money rewarded at the end of every battle. Does this count as a recession indicator? And the Everstone will prevent your Pokemon from evolving. The XP share is an interesting one, since in Gen 6 it was turned into a key item and then a settings option a little bit later, and then something that's just always on. But when it was just a held item, it would allow this Pokemon to gain 50% of the HP from knocking out opponent even if it wasn't in battle. And the Cleanse tag will have the encounter rates of random encounters in the wild, but since we don't really have random encounters in the wild anymore, it makes sense this was removed after Gen 8. And now for the berry items. The 6 EV berries don't have any effect in battle, but can be held. The 6 status berries will heal 5 of the non-volatile status conditions and also confusion, and the Lum Berry will also cover those 6 status conditions. The Lepid Berry will restore 10 PP points for the first move that draws to 0 PP. The Orange Berry will heal a massive 10 HP when your HP falls below 50%, and the Citrus Berry will heal 25% of your HP whenever your HP falls below 50%. If you're hit by a super effective attack, the Enigma Berry will heal your HP by 25%. And the 5 pinch berries will heal you for 33% of your HP whenever your HP falls below 25%, but will confuse you if your Pokemon's nature leads it to dislike a specific type of food. The Jacoba Berry and Royat Berry will damage your opponent for 1/8 of their HP whenever they hit you with a physical move or a special move. And also the Key Berry will raise your defense if you're hit by a physical move, and the Moringa Berry will raise your special defense whenever you're hit by a special move. The Booster Berries all activate whenever you fall below 25% HP. The Lancet Berry will increase your critical rate by 2 stages, and since you already have the Scope Lens and Razor Claw, that means you'll be at +4 critical rate, which will make every hit you land be a critical hit. The Mickle Berry will boost accuracy by 20%. Custap Berry will make your next move go first in the priority bracket. And these 5 berries will each boost one of your 5 stats by 1 stage, and the Starf Berry will boost a random stat on top of all these other boosts. And the 18 damage reduction berries will reduce the damage of a super effective attack by 50%. And the move has to be super effective, so if you're not weak to a fire type move, the Fire Berry won't activate and reduce damage by 50%, except for the normal berry. So if a normal type Pokemon is hit with a fighting type move, the Chople Berry will activate and reduce the damage. And also the Chillin Berry will activate if you're hit with a normal move, since no Pokemon is normally weak to normal type moves. So this berry will activate for any Pokemon. And the other 632 items can be held but don't have any effects in battle, which includes TMs, TRs, non-effect berries, medicine items, fossils, treasures, including the Gen 2 exclusive item that can only be found by catching a wild Machop in Gen 1 and transferring it to Gen 2, the Brick. So now we finally have this bricked up Pokemon. So let's go over all the effects that these items would have real quick. So this Pokemon would be protected from having any of its stats lowered by another Pokemon, having its ability being ignored, neutralized, or changed, immune to the secondary effects of attacks, immune to entry hazards, immune to the contact effects of the opposing Pokemon, immune to power moves, and immune to the effects of sun or rain, and also immune to being trapped. It would be protected from being KO'd by a single move, and a 10% chance to survive any attack that otherwise would KO. Its weight would be halved. It would have a 50% boost to its attack, speed, special attack, and special defense, but it would be locked into the first move you use, and you wouldn't be able to use status moves. Also, moves that are used in succession will be boosted by an additional 20% up to 100%. It would also have a 10% boost to its physical and special moves, a 44% boost to all types of attacks, which you would also get one-time 30% boost to each specific type, for a total boost of 87.2% to your attacks. A 1/256 multiplier to speed, but also forced to go last in your priority bracket 80% of the time, and first in your priority bracket 20% of the time. Your opponent's moves will have a 10% decrease to their accuracy, a 10% boost to your own accuracy that will be boosted to 32% if you're attacking a Pokemon that has moved before you, and moves that are super effective will have their power increased by 20%. This Pokemon will be switched out whenever its stats are lowered, which really means whenever you lower your own stats, since other Pokemon can't lower your stats. And your stats will also be raised whenever they're lowered due to the White Herb. This Pokemon won't have any type immunities. You would have a 50% chance to land a critical hit, a 100% chance to land a critical hit if it's Chansey or part of the Farfetch'd line. All moves would be boosted by 30%, but you would lose 10% of your HP whenever you land an attack, and you would also have a 19% chance to flinch your opponent. And if the Pokemon holding all items at once is one of the specific Pokemon that has a species-specific item, it would gain the effects of the species-specific item. Otherwise, those items won't do anything, like the form-changing items, Mega Stones, and species-specific Z Crystals. And that's all the effects that are constantly active. And for the situational items, if this Pokemon sets the weather, screens, or terrains, those effects would last 8 turns instead of 5, and it would get a one-time boost to its defenses depending on the terrain. If your opponent raises their own stats, the Mirror Herb will copy those stat increases. If Trick Room is set up or you're sent out into Trick Room, your speed stat would be lowered by 1 stage. But if you haven't used your eject pack, you would actually just end up getting switched right back out. And here are some boosts to specific moves. Multi-strike moves will always hit at least 4 times if you're able to hit that many times. Draining moves will increase the amount of healing by 30%. Trapping moves will always last 7 turns and deal 1/6 damage, pretty much guaranteeing a KO after 6 turns. If hit by a water attack, your special attack and special defense will be raised by 1 stage. Ice moves and electric moves will each raise attack 1 time each. If you use a sound-based move, you'll get a 1-time special attack boost. This Pokemon will force itself and the opponent to be switched out whenever it's hit the first time. If this Pokemon is contacted, it will damage the opponent for 1/8 of their HP and then transfer the item Sticky Barb to that Pokemon. If this Pokemon is hit with a physical move or special move, it will deal 1/8 damage back to the attacking Pokemon, and also raising the defense and special defense by 1 stage. Charge moves can be used in 1 turn 1 time. You would have a 10% boost to punching moves. You would take 50% less damage from the first normal move used against this Pokemon. And if you're with a super effective move, Weakness Policy will increase attack and special attack by 2 stages, as well as gaining back 25% of your HP. And also the super effective attack will be reduced 1 time by 50% for that specific type of attack. If a move is reduced to 0 PP, it will have its PP restored by 10 points. If you miss a move, Blender Policy will raise your speed by 2 stages. This Pokemon will also heal 1/8 of damage dealt to the opposing Pokemon, and some health-based activations. If this Pokemon falls below 50% HP, it will gain 25% of HP back, as well as an additional 30 HP points. If you fall below 25% HP, the 5 pinch berries will gain back 33% of your HP, 5 times. So it'll heal you back up to full, but it will be confused if it doesn't like the taste of a specific berry. Also at 25% HP, you'll get a 1 stage boost to all 5 stats and an additional 1 random boost on top of that. It'll be guaranteed to go first in the priority bracket of its next attack. It'll gain a 20% boost to accuracy, a 2 stage boost to critical rate, and some status-based effects. If it's infatuated, the opposing Pokemon will become infatuated. If this Pokemon is inflicted with one of the non-volatile status conditions or confused, the Cure Berries will cure it 1 time. And since the only moves that can cause flinching or freeze are inflicted as secondary effects, this Pokemon can't be flinched or frozen since Covert Cloak protects you from secondary effects of your opponent's moves. The Berserk Gene will immediately confuse this Pokemon, but have its attack raised by 2 stages, but it will immediately be cured of its confusion due to the Person Berry or Lum Berry. And at the end of the turn, this Pokemon will be inflicted by burn or badly poisoned status condition, heal 1/16 of its HP, an additional 1/16 if it's a poison type. If this Pokemon isn't a poison type, it'll lose 1/8 of its HP for a net loss of 1/16 HP. So that's all the effects wrapped up. But how about some abilities that interact with items? The first ability is technically kind of useless, which is Klutz, which negates the effects of all items held by that Pokemon. You still can use the move Fling though, so if you just want to drop everything on your opponent, you technically could do that. And for some abilities that work with berries, Cheek Pouch will add a 33% HP increase in addition to the effects of the berry, so it's actually pretty good for longevity. The ability Gluttony will cause all berries that activate at 25% HP or less to activate at 50% HP. Cudchew will allow you to use a berry 1 more time after it's used, and Harvest has a 50% chance to regrow a berry at the end of the turn after it's used. This does have a 100% chance to activate whenever the sun is up, but since you're holding the utility umbrella, the sun bonus won't activate. And the ability Ripen will double the effects of the berry, whether it's healing, damaging, or boosting stats. The ability Symbiosis will transfer your items to your partner Pokemon whenever they use their item. So like a lot of the other abilities, this could go one of 2 ways. Either it'll just transfer a random item to a Pokemon that's already used their item, or you could transfer every single item to your partner Pokemon. But from the comments, it seems like you guys like the chaotic option. So instead of just 1 item being passed along, we'll say every single item would be passed along whenever Symbiosis activates. I'll leave it up to you guys. The ability Sticky Hold will prevent your items from being stolen, destroyed, or even swapped off, although one item Sticky Barb can still be transferred. And this might be the best ability since it protects all your items from being knocked off, which is the whole point of this video, to have every single item. And also 3 poison type Pokemon have this ability, so they end up gaining extra HP due to Black Sludge. The ability Unburden will double your speed if your held item is used or removed. But as far as I can tell, this ability only activates when you're no longer holding any item. So for this ability to activate, you'd have to remove every single item to get the double speed boost. The ability Magic Guard would be another good ability to mention here. It doesn't specifically interact with items, but it prevents you from taking any damage that isn't from a direct attack. So you wouldn't take damage from Burn, Poison, Sticky Barb, or Black Sludge. But what about some abilities your opponent can use?
Take the laptops and electronics out the bag. If you got a hoodie on, take it all! Take it all!
Well, the ability Frisk will reveal any items your opponent is holding. So again, this could just reveal one random item, or it could reveal all 900 plus items, which would take about 15 to 20 minutes, assuming each text box lasts 1 second. The ability Unnerve will prevent this Pokemon from eating any of its berries. The ability Magician will only activate if the Pokemon with this ability isn't holding an item, but it will steal one random item or every single item if they hit you with any attack. But Magician is also blocked by Sticky Hold. If the opponent has Pickpocket, whenever you make contact with them, they'll steal one or all items, as long as they're not already holding an item. But this ability should be negated by Protective Pads, and would also be blocked by Sticky Hold. The ability Pickup will cause the Pokemon to pick up another item consumed by another Pokemon, as long as it's not already holding an item. So probably the best ability to have for this Pokemon is either Sticky Hold or Magic Guard, and one of the best abilities for your opponent to have is Magician or Unnerve. But how about moves that interact with items? Well, the next 5 moves are status moves, so they can't actually be used since you're holding the Assault Vest. But the move Recycle will regain an item that was used, which will recycle one or all of the items used. But this move only works for items that were used and not stolen or knocked off. The move Stuffed Cheeks will cause this Pokemon to eat its berry and get a +2 defense boost for each berry it eats. The move Trick or Switcheroo will swap one item or all items, but this move fails if the opponent has Sticky Hold. The move Tea Time causes all Pokemon on the field to eat their berries. So this move could be used by a partner to force this Pokemon to eat all its berries, allowing it to gain an Omni Boost and heal itself. And the move Bestow gives one or all items to the opposing Pokemon, and this move can't bypass Protect. The move G-Max Replenish has a 50% chance to recover a berry, one random berry, or every single berry you've eaten. This can recover berry for your ally Pokemon, but this move is exclusive to Gen 8. The move Belch is a 120 base power poison move that can only be used after you eat a berry in battle. Otherwise, you can't use the move. But this move isn't further powered up by eating more berries, so no matter how many berries this Pokemon has eaten, Belch will only have a base power of 120. The move Fling will flung an item at your opponent, and so every item that can be flung by Fling has a specific base power associated with it, and items that don't have a base power associated with them can't be flung by Fling. So like Z Crystals, TMs, but not TRs, male items can't be flung by Fling. And for the Gen 2 items that were cut before Fling became a move, we'll just go ahead and give them the standard base power of 30. Except for the Brick item, which I think should have a base power of, well, let's say 200. Which sounds like a lot, but is really just a drop in the bucket. And if you think that the Brick item having a base power of 200 is unacceptable, then let me know what base power this feels like. So there's a few ways this move can work. Either Fling can flung a random item at your opponent every time you use it, or it can fling one item at a time in succession. So it will basically be a multi-hit move that hits 613 times. Or it can fling every item at once, taking average base power of all the flung items. Or it can fling every single item at once and add up the base power of all the items, which will give you a grand total base power of 24,060, basically guaranteeing a one-hit KO on any Pokemon. So if we go with the base power of 24,060, how powerful will this move actually be? Well, if you take a level 1 Chansey, which is the weakest Pokemon that can learn Fling, with a lowering attack nature, no attack investment, and a -6 attack stat, versus a Regirock that has Terrored into a type that resists Dark-type moves, with maxed out defenses and a +6 defense stat, technically a Shuckle with Multiscale or Shadow Shield that also has maxed out defenses and is Terrored into a type that resists Dark, would be stronger, but you can't really argue with that. The Chansey would deal massive, mind-bending, earth-shattering 1 damage. Well, that's not completely true. Since this is Chansey specifically, it will always land a critical hit. So the -6 attack drops and the +6 defense increase will actually be ignored. So the damage would actually be around 7 or 8. But okay, this is a terrible example. So if the Chansey is also level 100 and has a small amount of attack investment to get an attack stat of 93, it would be enough to KO the Regirock through all the defense increases. And so pretty much any other Pokemon in the game that has basically any attack stat above base power 45 can KO any Pokemon in the game. There are certain items that have a secondary effect when flung by Fling. So for like the berry items, if it would normally heal Pokemon that eats it, it would damage the opponent, but then also heal them after the damage is done. And the items like King's Rock and Razor Fang will cause the target to flinch, the Light Ball will paralyze the target, and the Mental Orb will cure any of the following effects: Infatuation, Taunt, Encore, Torment, Disable, and Heal Block. Poison Barb will poison the target, Toxic Orb will badly poison the target, Flame Orb will burn the target, and the White Herb will restore any of their lowered stats. But surprisingly, a move with a base power of 24,060 isn't the strongest move you can have in this scenario. So in the last video I mentioned two moves that you're probably all waiting for, and Fling was one of them, but there is actually another move I forgot since it was Dexited, but some people were mentioning in the comments, and that move is Natural Gift. So Natural Gift is a move that was Dexited after Gen 7, and it has the effect of consuming the berry you're holding, but will change the type and power of the move based on the berry. So like Fling, this can work a couple different ways. Whenever you use Natural Gift, it could just eat one random berry and then deal damage according to that berry. Or it could rapid fire through the 67 berries, eating one at a time, but dealing damage according to that berry 67 times in one attack. Or it could eat all 67 berries at once, dealing all 18 types of damage, and the base power attack would be the average of all the berries. Or it could eat all the berries at once, dealing 18 different types of damage, and the base power would be the sum of all the berries combined, leaving you with a base power of 5,860. And while a base power of 5,860 that would then be boosted by the plate items and regular type boosting items, and maybe the gens if you haven't used it, all combining to have a base power of over 300 million, sounds great. Since all types are being applied in one move, that means normal, ground, flying, ghost, dark, steel, and fairy types would be immune to this attack. So the rapid fire option would actually be more likely to KO any Pokemon, since you wouldn't have to worry about the whole move being cancelled out because of one type. And we don't need to do any calculations, a base power of over 300 million would definitely KO any Pokemon. Under most circumstances, obviously Focus Dash and Sturdy exist. But what about some defensive moves your opponent can use on you? The move Bug Bite and Pluck will eat a berry off of your opponent, and in this case, could eat one random berry or all at once. The Jacoba Parry can still activate though. Sticky Hold will prevent your items from being stolen. Corrosive Gas removes all items from the opponent, and whenever Corrosive Gas is used, you cannot recycle the items. It is blocked by Sticky Hold though. The move Covet will steal the item if the Pokemon using it isn't already holding an item, but you can't steal items off a Pokemon with the ability Sticky Hold. Incinerate will destroy any berries the opponent is holding. This effect is blocked by Sticky Hold though. The move Magic Room prevents all items and effects from being activated, so you can't even use the move Fling. The move Embargo prevents items from being used or activated. The embargo does end if the Pokemon using it is switched out. The move Poltergeist is a move that can only deal damage to an opposing Pokemon if it's holding an item. But as far as I can tell with this one, it doesn't get a damage increase because the Pokemon has an item. It can just only deal damage because the Pokemon has an item. But if for whatever reason it is boosted for every single item, it would have a base power of over 100,000. And this should definitely KO almost any Pokemon. And then the final move we've probably all been waiting for, and that's Knockoff. So the move Knockoff is a 65 base power move, and it will be boosted by 50% if the opposing Pokemon is holding an item, and it will knock off that item after this move is used. So like Fling, this can go a few different ways. It can knock off one random item and get a one-time 50% boost, or it can knock off all items at once, but still only get a 50% boost. And while obviously there isn't a precedent for this, but looking through the information on Knockoff, it does sound like it would only get a 50% boost, even if it's knocking off multiple items at once. But one other way it could go down is that it would knock off every single item at once and get a 50% boost for every single item it knocks off. And unlike Fling, which can only fling certain items, Knockoff just has to knock off any item. So if you're holding 954 items, that means Knockoff would be boosted by 50% 954 times. So if you do the quick calculation of 65 times 1.5 to the power of 954, you get a base power move of 6.36 times 10 to the power 169. And to try to put this into perspective, the total estimated number of atoms in the known universe is 10 to the power of 80. So if you had every single atom in the universe, and giving that atom its own universe's worth of atoms, creating a 10 to the power 80 universes packed into one universe, you would still have a smaller number by a factor of about a billion. So with a base power this high, this should definitely KO the Pokemon that's holding every single item. Well, not really. So in a similar scenario, A level 1 Chansey versus maxed out defense Regirock holding all items, this should definitely KO, but the item focus status exists, and since knockoff is only dealing damage one time, that means Regirock or any other Pokemon holding every single item at once, as long as it's at full health, it will survive because of Focus Sash. And even if the Focus Sash is broken, it still has a 10% chance to survive due to Focus Ban. Also, Sticky Hold prevents your items from being knocked off. Okay, and that's all the items and abilities and moves that interact with them. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. I posted my first video in May, and it's September now, and somehow I'm already at 5,000 subscribers, so I can't thank you guys enough. Please like, subscribe, share, comment what other videos you want. I have some other ideas I want to work on, but I just want to say thank you guys so much for all the support. Sticky Hold.